In this video, I'm going to show you how I would map out your typical website, web application, maybe a mobile app, any type of application that has a view. This is what I have been doing for a long time now, decades, and it works fantastically well. So the first thing you got to do is you got to figure out what the basic specs are for the project. So you go see a client, there's a sit down, there's an interview process, and you got to determine what it is they need to have done, whether it's building a web app from scratch or website from scratch or modifying an existing website. So let's say, for the sake of argument, we're going to be modifying an existing website for, I don't know, a florist, somebody who sells flowers and arrangements and so forth. So their business is selling flowers and flower accessories, pots and stuff like that. And also maybe they have a service where people can book consultations, where they have the professional flower person go in and assess their home and say, okay, you have this much light, you could have this type of plant here and that type of plant here. What's your lifestyle like? Okay, this one doesn't require water, this requires a bit more care. You have no cats, etc., to take dumps in the plant thing there. What's it called? A pot. So there you go. So this is the situation. So I'm going to imagine that I'm working with this client, and we're figuring out what they want for their website, but has a few things. Okay. So first thing we're going to do, I like using multicolored pens or markers because you can use different markers to denote different types of things. So for the basic spec for the site, we're going to call it, so you got to go flower site. Okay, we'll just call it that. So what you want to do is you want to ask your clients, okay, what do you want to see on the site? So they have, let's say for the sake of argument, because you're going to get this a lot, they have an existing site that's static HTML, and they want to upgrade it with a bunch of new features. So first of all, we're going to take notes. Static site upgrade. So the first question you got to ask yourself, what do you want to upgrade? Well, do you want to upgrade the visuals? Do you want to upgrade the visual aspect, the design? And a lot of times, if they have a tired old design, they may want to do a total reskin, as they call it. We'll call this reskin. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you know right now, okay, we're going to have to bring in some design skills here, reskin. Now, you have a couple options for that. You could, if you're not a designer-centric individual, you can use templates. So what do you do in that situation? You can go say options, you can go templates. So let's say you're not design-centric, you go templates, or you can go, another option would be design from scratch. There we go. So if you're doing templates, you would give them 3 options to choose from, and then you implement that template. So that's one thing. You got the visual aspect, you got the design. So you got to have to account for that when you're pricing out of a project. How about other aspects of this situation here? What other things you're going to need? Well, they say, well, we have a Shopify site, and we want to upgrade that. So you say, well, what kind of upgrade? So what kind? You say, we just want to kind of upgrade. So you go, okay, what kind of upgrade? Some people are going to, they're going to say, well, we will need the store to be able to this, that, and the other thing. Now, you have to know, does Shopify allow that? So does Shopify allow? These are the questions you could ask. Does Shopify does it have the features that will allow the client to to have what they want implemented? If not, then you might have to go from scratch. You may have to use a plugin. This is where, when I say, especially if you're a freelance developer and you're planning on working for small business, these are things you'll come across, and having a good foundational skills will allow you to go and quickly assess things. You'll be able to go see whether or not Shopify can implement the features that they want. maybe some special discounting capability or something. I don't know. You have to find out whether Shopify supports that. If not, what can you do? So having a knowledge of things like Wix and Shopify and other solutions like this, it's not competition to you. They're just tools that you could leverage. So you may find that all you need to do is do some tweaks to the Shopify, maybe new images, maybe the client wants new photos. Now you have to decide, are you going to provide the photos or not? You know, you or them, you know. Again, these are all part of the cost, right? So you got a Shopify site. So you got the static site itself has to be reskinned. We'll say that. The Shopify site has to be upgraded. We'll just assume that they just need to add a few more things and there's a plugin for Shopify. So you implement the plugin. But they also have a new feature, new function, which they don't have now. They want to be able to book appointments for consultations. Now, we'll assume for the sake of this demo that Shopify does not support that. So the question you're going to ask yourself is, do you build from scratch, or you, or are you going to have to, or is there a product that you can use out there? So let me just flip the page here. So we're going to call this section, we're going to call it the booking module. So you as a dev, you're going to have to go first to see, is there a solution? Always better to reuse a solution than to build it, or build from scratch. I don't know if I spelled that right, but anyway. So you have these two options you got to consider, right? So again, fundamentals come in handy here. So you're going to ask, what's the features of the booking system, right? So I'm doing in giant markers, so it's easier to videotape, but I probably do in pen or type it out. So what are the features? You're going to say form to put a user contact information. So what contact information? You get a name, phone, email, basics. So you got a form, people fill this in. So you ask the question, does the system need to be able to auto book? So does your client want to be able to go in to some user interface that you build or it's built where they can put the dates that they're available? And then when people come to their store site, to the booking engine, will they be able to select available dates based on what's in the database engine, based on what's in the database rather. Very standard stuff. Again, you could build this from scratch, but it's a lot more work to build something like that, where you got to coordinate with bookings and track bookings in a database, present those to users, check to see if a booking is available or not, date and time. You know, that's very basic stuff. Or you do something very simple. Let's say they decide it's going to be simple. They just fill in a form and then they requested dates, time. So you can give them a little form element where you just do a very simple, that's the simple option here, where they just put their name, phone, email, and they can just type in, okay, we like to, maybe on a Monday or Tuesday around this time. And then this form will then be sent to, it could be a Python Django page, or very quickly it could just be a PHP page. But it processes the form information and then sends an email to the client. This is very simple. This would be the simple option here. It wouldn't take much time. Create your HTML form. You process it via PHP. PHP then just forwards the response back to the user via an email address. That's as simple. It's very primitive. Works fine. Another option would be to find some sort of professional booking system that you could hook into. Again, it depends on their budget. Depends on if you can find one that's cool out there. As a professional developer, in the web especially, part of your job is to understand the options out there and to understand when it makes sense to use one option or the other. So let's look at this project in a big picture way now. So let's say we'll diagram it. So we got the original website here. I'll just go like this. This is like the home page. And then they got a link to their Shopify store. Shopify store. So Shopify is in there, it's fine. And then they'll have a link to it could be a booking engine, which you're going to have to determine, or I'll put a booking page. So we'll just encapsulate that, boom, right? And then you may have a list of, maybe they want a WordPress blog. They say, oh, we want a WordPress blog too. So your WordPress blog, because they want to add articles and content on a regular basis. They don't always want to call you, right? So that's an option. But also, they also tell you, you know what, we want a newsletter too. So, okay, you want a newsletter, okay. So you're going to build a newsletter system from scratch? No, you're not. You're going to go to like Chimp or GetResponse. There's many out there, you know, MailChimp. We'll just call it news. So here, in terms of task, here is going to have to be reskin of this page, of this site. This is the site, the home page. This is the site. And you're going to have a WordPress site, which probably has to have it's going to have a skin that aligns with the main site, the static page here. Although you could also, if you know WordPress, you can also make the home page the static part of WordPress as well. So you could do it all integrated. You're going to use MailChimp to do the email functionality. You're going to look at either a booking page or a booking engine, depending on what's going on. You're going to just keep that link to the Shopify cart. And they may want to add extra pages. It could be like update their, an About Us page or what have you. So that's a basic example of the site. So you got this site. So now what you would do, you would, since this is external, your design work will be applied here, here and here, and maybe here, in terms of the new skin. And then what you're going to do, let's say you're going to build this form out, just for the sake of argument, So you're going to build the form, so you're just going to have to, you're going to show the form, book, consult, form, and then you're going to have name. You're going to have, what was the other one? Email, dates suggested. I don't know, there's different ways you could do date pickers here. You could, you take note, you can go date picker, just have them just type it in, date picker. I don't know. This is very primitive, where this goes to, we'll say it goes to, I'll just say PHP for the sake of argument, process form.php. There you go. So you would extend this process. Let's say you had a bunch of pages where you had to collect form data and so forth. So now let's say we're doing this raw. We're going to do our own simple form because they just want the simple thing. They don't want to use an outside service. So what are you going to do there? So you're going to go, okay, we got to create a database. So if we're going to create a database, let me use the red pen. So we're going to call it database. So you just need one table. And because you could do this with a flat file database, but I just prefer using SQL databases because just in case you want to have complex relationships. And in this database, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have a name. We're going to have the ID field, right? Unique ID, auto increment, auto. And sorry, it's not the clearest here. We're going to have a name field, which is a column, right? So this is going to be, of course, a string data, 256. And then we're going to have phone. I just keep it a string personally, I just do that. And then date for the date. Now, if you have multiple dates, let's say you want to give them the ability to put in multiple dates, then you're going to have to create a second table as the proper way. You could do it in one table, because a lot of new databases, SQL, you can shove objects into fields. That's fine, or just arrays even. That's fine, but proper design, if you're really building a big system, you would have another table here, and we call we call booking dates. And then it would have a foreign key related back to this particular user's entry, right? Because they may put in 2 dates. They may go a date, it would be date, and then there would be a date. They say, hey, we want to go on this date, but they may want to go on this date as well. So this is called a one-to-many, N is the usual term, relationship, meaning for every user that fills in the form, they may have several dates that they'll enter as possibilities for bookings. Anyway, I could go on from there. So you see this whole process. You would iterate this process, meaning you would clean it up. You would start drawing out your screens. You look at Shopify, see what the time requirement is there, assuming that it will satisfy their needs. You would look at if there's any booking engines. If there's no booking engines, then you don't have to do any of this. If there is a booking engine, rather, then you don't have to do any of this database stuff, right? You can just use the booking engine. So a lot of times as a professional developer, you're leveraging external apps, external services. So here you're using WordPress. I would just use a built-in WordPress, self-host, simple enough. Here you use MailChimp. So you just stick in the form in MailChimp and use the MailChimp or GetResponse or whatever you want to use. There you might use an external booking engine. There you might use Shopify. You may build a shopping cart from scratch. You may find that there are particular needs that Shopify does not support. So there you go. This is a very rough introduction of what it's like to spec out a website or a web app. Notice how I'm not writing any code here. You notice there's a lot of work and planning here that's nothing to do with code, right? That's why I always tell people, learn your fundamentals, then you kind of get a lay of the land. You understand when it makes sense to use Vue or React, when it makes sense to use Shopify or WordPress. If you have a client, for example, as I said before, they tell you, yeah, we want to add weekly articles and stuff. You definitely want to use WordPress in that, or maybe Drupal or some other CMS. You definitely want to implement that. You don't want to build a CMS from scratch. So you do that. So you see, let's assume that we're doing a custom database. So there's design work, front page, there's some integration in shopping, MailChimp, set it up for them. Install WordPress. Make sure the WordPress skin matches the static homepage skin, or you can make the WordPress, the homepage as well. It depends on how you want to work that. I do both. I've done both. They have the pros and cons. And then you have to look at the database stuff. So you figure all of this out with the client. You present them options. You say, okay, this is what we should do here. This is what we should do there, and they're going to tell you. And once you figure that out, okay, we're going to do a static homepage, a separate WordPress blog. So it'll be flower shop /blog. So that in there you put your WordPress. You said we're going to use MailChimp as an example. So you set up a MailChimp account, you put the forms in on the home page, maybe in the blog pages. They decide that they just want a simple one-page booking system. So you're going to have the 2 tables as we described here. Simple form. Again, the form just has to be skinned to kind of go along with the rest of the look of the site. We're going to keep the Shopify because it works fine for now. And there's your job. There's a lot of planning to be done, if you will, a little bit of back and forth before you even write code. And you got to get paid to do all this planning. You spend maybe 20 minutes working on a basic proposal for a small business website like this, and that's it. You don't do any more. And everything else, they got to pay, right? They got to pay because you got to research. You got to go check to see if Shopify will allow them to extend their functionality. You got to research the booking engines. You can't be expected to know all the booking engines that are out there. You got to, if you don't know, how to use this, GetResponse or MailChimp or whatever one you happen to use, you got to look at it. You got to spend time looking at that. A lot of times you can, it's going to take me half an hour to get my head wrapped around this and install the forms. The booking engine, you may be able to just, boom, license it for $20 a month or $10 a month. You say, hey, this is your cost. It's going to be a lot cheaper than me spending 2 hours, an hour, creating a database, probably 2 hours. Create the database, create the form, process the data, send out an email. That's probably an hour and a half, 2 hour job, maybe. And then install WordPress. Got to find a theme that matches their general look, or maybe you build a theme from scratch. You don't have a theme; it's just a template. So there you have it. Very, very basic. So you see, I just wanted to show you guys what development is really about for many people. Now, if you're doing AI and stuff, then you're getting into algorithms and deep stuff. But that's a very small part of the game. Most of the time, you're developing screens, you're considering disparate technology, microservices. You may use a microservice from some vendor to process one thing or another. Or you may use an app like a full booking engine to handle the bookings. So a developer has a lay of the land, armed with the fundamental skill sets, and then they're able to go out there and quickly assess what things are going to do that will best help that particular project. I hope that helps. And this video is sponsored by me, Studioweb. Check out my courses below. If you want to learn real-world development from a 169-year-old nerd such as myself who's been doing this game, this is going to be my first shot actually at the importance of algorithms. Not that important in real-world coding most of the time. Don't let people fool you. There are certain jobs where they're going to have you write silly algorithms, and then you're going to be ending up doing this kind of work, which I just did here, which has nothing to do with algorithms. I'm going to check into that. I'm not sure what percentages of jobs will test you for algorithms, but I would be surprised if a large percentage. Anyway, that's another story. That's another video. So I hope you got a good idea of what it's like. This is really rough. This is really, really rough in terms of building some sort of functional application. This is like a web app, website type of deal here. But this type of thing can be worked with. This process, if you will, can be applied to mobile development and all kinds of thick client development as well. That's it for now. Bye-bye.